Greetings everyone. I'm going to make part 2 of this video on the resurrection day of Messiah today. I saw in my last video that things didn't turn out reversed. So you can get this on Amazon. Yeah, it's not going to focus for us. Oh, there it is. Alright, you can see that. Okay. Let's find the proper page here. Daniel's Prophecy of 77s, page 325. Okay, so that's the zoom. Okay, let's put the zoom back. So last time I read in this edition here, what is it? Jews either forbid the reading of the book of Daniel or trot out anti-Messiah interpretations. So I expressed some concern about the source of that, and actually it is somewhat of an urban legend. A friend wrote in with the correction that I sought, and so I'm gonna quote from him because it's pretty good. He writes, "There isn't an official halakha against reading Daniel. There are a number of halakhot against speculative eschatologies and things above, and this has led to a diminutive role assigned to Daniel, but it is perfectly kosher to read." He also refers to Mishnah Hagiga 2:4, forbidding the study of things that were before, that were above the study of chariots. So the context is Rabbi Akiba's disciples. So I'll continue reading his quote in a minute, but Rabbi Akiba was the rabbi who was involved in the Second Jewish Revolt and was put to death by the Romans for his involvement in that. So Rabbi Akiba had 4 disciples, continuing to quote from this friend, who it is said had heavenly throne room experiences. I put in the words "it is said" because we're not certain that they actually did have these experiences. And then 3 of them went crazy. So maybe they did have these experiences, but maybe like the 7 sons of Siva who tried to cast out a demon that they weren't authorized to do so, they went crazy. Who knows? Okay, so he also says there is an attitude of suspicion toward the book, that is the book of Daniel, and also a wholesale belief in Seder Olam, in the Seder Olam chronology, which is, and these are my words, which is an attempt to re-explain Daniel 9 in terms that don't apply to Yeshua. And the Seder Olam was put out by Akiba's contemporary Rabbi Hosea Yosei Halafta. Okay, so much thanks to that friend for sending in the needed correction. Daniel is kosher to read among Jews, but they look askance at the book or at the use of the book in eschatology and definitely anything that they would disagree with. Okay, so we covered the general overview of the prophecy. I'll do a little review here by showing the charts. Let's zoom in here. Ways to count a 7. Okay, we concluded that a 7 is either a sabbatical year, the 7th year, or it is a period of 7, but counted unit-wise. In other words, part of the period counts numerically as the same as the whole of it. Okay. And then over on this page, the sabbatical year structure of Daniel 9:24-27. We saw that chart. You can study it out. So there are 7 sevens from 445 BC when the decree was made, and then 62 more sevens after the 7 sevens, leading up to the sabbatical year just before AD 34. Zoom back out there. Just before AD 34. Okay, so now we're going to discuss the next section here is called the failure of AD 33 and Daniel 9. Okay, so AD 33 advocates fully realize that other chronological data exclude the Friday date in AD 30. That is why I explained that Tiberius's 15th year was completely reliable and is not to be backdated by a fictitious co-regency. That leaves, okay, so I explained that in another part of this book. That leaves only AD 33, which I will now show, besides contradicting Matthew 12:40 and the first of the Sabbath, also fails the test of the Daniel 9 prophecy. The classic calculation was developed by Sir Robert Anderson in The Coming Prince for AD 32. So a little dagger on here on The Coming Prince, 1894. Okay, so that's the date of that book. Let's see. Okay, the classic calculation was developed by Sir Robert Anderson in The Coming Prince for AD 32. This position has been abandoned due to the fact that AD 32 lacks any possible Friday, Thursday, or Wednesday dates for Nisan 14. When it was discovered that astronomical calculation disproved AD 32, okay, just choosing a camera check here, yeah, okay, good. When it was discovered that astronomical calculation disproved AD 32, evangelical fundamentalists revised the argument for AD 33. Double dagger, so we got a footnote there. And that says, beginning with Roger Bacon, circa AD 1250, making use of the Almagest, some began to realize that AD 34 would not work out for them, and so proposed AD 33. But matters remained confusing and controversial through the end of the 19th century. With the discovery of Babylonian astronomical diaries, it became increasingly clear that astronomical calculation was very accurate. Okay, continuing after double dagger. Evangelical fundamentalists revised the argument for AD 33. Anderson's original argument proposed that the decree was given in 445 BC, which was the correct starting year. Footnote 324. Okay, so let's read footnote 324. But he also incorrectly put the new moon on March 14, Julian. Nevertheless, Parker and Duberstein placed this month as a new moon, Adar 2, making the day part of March 15, 445 BC, the first of Adar 2. My calculations, based on Steve Moshier's public domain Jet Propulsion Laboratory code for the Astronomical Almanac, give the same day for the new moon, only on the biblical calendar as Nisan 1, as the scripture treats the Tekufa differently than the Babylonian Persian calendar. Anderson also asserted that the day part of the 10th of Nisan in AD 32 was April 6, Julian. This day is a Sunday in the Julian reckoning. However, the new moon was seen on March 31st, just after sunset that year. And so the day part of the 10th of Nisan needs to be corrected to Thursday, April 10th. Also, as stated before in this book, the day part of the 14th of Nisan was Monday, April 14th. which is the key fact that makes AD 32 impossible for the crucifixion. In Anderson's day, retrocalculation at the range of minus 2,000 years, still in its infancy and fraught with errors. And this was costly to Anderson because both his calculations for the new moon in 445 BC and AD 32 are incorrect. The 445 BC miscalculation was a minor error, correctable by realizing the new moon was just a day later. The AD 32 error was completely fatal for his ending point. Okay. Anderson's original argument proposed that the decree was given in 445 BC, which was the correct starting year. However, the evangelical argument for AD 33 revised the start date to 444 BC, 1 year later. This change of the 20th year of Artaxerxes from 445 BC requires the assumption that Nehemiah imposed a Tishri 1 New Year on the Nisan 1 New Year of the Persians, and then forward dated the Tishri year by 6 months. In the top row of figure 68, Tishri translation of Artaxerxes 1's Nisan year. Okay, so let's look at this figure here. Figure 68, Tishri translation of Artaxerxes Nisan year. Okay, we're going to zoom in on it here. Okay, there you see it. Okay, so you see two choices here, one on the left and one on the right. Okay, and the one on the left is option 20A, or 20A would be the 20A is the 20th year of Artaxerxes. Okay. Okay, so that could be shifted backwards to 20B, or it could be shifted forward to 20C if you're trying to translate it. Okay. Now, I don't believe this actually happened. And I'll explain that later. Okay, but the point is there's two interpretations that could be got about if you were to say that the Nisan year was translated into a Tishri year. So in the top row of figure 68, Tishri translation of Artaxerxes 1's Nisan year. Below, 20A represents the standard Babylonian reckoning of Artaxerxes' 20th year, as given in Parker and Duberstein, and starting in the spring. See Table 12, Artaxerxes 1, Summary, page 328. So I showed you that in the last video here. Let's see. Presume this is page 328. Yes, it is. I'm going to zoom in on that. So there's the Parker and Duberstein table. Let's stop wiggling. Right there. And you'll see in the bottom row, column 2, you'll see the 20th year, 445, and Nisan 1 is on 413, which is April 13. Back this out again. Alrighty. So, if Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 1 places Kislev before Nisan in the same year as Nisan 2:1, he would be using a definition of the 20th year beginning in the fall. Okay, asterisk. The if is because I now regard this as a Jubilee cipher for the 20th year of the Jubilee, and we should interpret the Persian year from its normal spring epoch rather than converting it. The potential for a Jubilee was mentioned in the original edition, page 335. Conclusive reckoning for this possibility is given on page 348. Okay, so we haven't actually got there yet. That's why I said if here. All right. The left and right hand sides of the figures represent two ways to translate the Babylonian spring equinox into a fall basis, 20b or 20c. Okay, so there it is again. 20b would be to shift the year backwards or forward, and 20c would be to shift it backwards. So the 20b there, as you can see, 20b, that agrees with 444 BC. So that's how they come up with 444 BC. They've translated the standard Persian year into a Tishri equivalent. Thus, AD 33 advocates want to translate 20a to 20b on the basis of Nehemiah 1:1, which mentions Kislev, the 9th month, which falls before Nisan. The only problem with this assumption is that 20a to 20c also satisfies the text. It does not matter whether the translation is to a Tishri year after or before. Kislev comes after Tishri in both cases and meets the presumed requirement of Nehemiah 1:1 and 2:1. The question then is, which way would a translation be done to a Tishri year? Whether such translation followed the Nisan regnal year or preceded it by 6 months with any particular king depended on whether the accession date was between Nisan 1 and the following Tishri, or between Tishri 1 and the following Nisan. British Museum tablet BM 32234 sheds some light on this, and the relevant line is 514 question mark to 1821, August 4th question mark to 8 question mark. So what is in doubt in the textual reading of the text is the actual day of the month, but the month itself is not in question, and so the line is appended: death by murder of Xerxes. Okay, 325 footnote, Babylonian chronology, 1956, page 17. The translation to modern dates in the parentheses was done by Parker and Duberstein. Parker and Duberstein add, the day number is imperfectly preserved and all numbers from 14 to 18 are possible. Sachs, which is to say, the possible dates range between August 4 and 8, 465. Okay, so this shows that Xerxes died between Nisan 1 and the following Tishri in the year 465, and allowing all interpretations of the tablet between August 4 and August 8, 465 BC. The month figure is clearly intact. This demonstrates that Xerxes' successor would have a short accession year, about a month and a half, to Tishri, and that the first year of his reign would start with Tishri 465 BC in the Jewish reckoning. That is, using a Tishri regnal year. Now, I will mention I do not believe these conversions were actually done or even necessary. Even in the chronology of the kings of Judah and the kings of Israel, it's not necessary to convert one year over the other. When there's a synchronism between Judah and Israel, the parts of the year that overlapped are the basis of the synchronism. It's not saying that one year is equivalent to the other. Okay, so continuing here, the Babylonian tablets know no successor except Artaxerxes I, and the Egyptian documents know only of Artaxerxes as succeeding Xerxes. So this is an important little footnote here. Okay, so we need to discuss Artabanus. From Cyrus to Alexander, A History of the Persian Empire. Pierre Birat, page 566, 2006. He writes, in the archaeological record, Artaxerxes directly succeeds Xerxes with no one else mentioned. Centuries later, circa AD 160 to 240, Africanus tells us Xerxes' murderer Artabanus reigned for 7 months. So also Eusebius, AD 263 to 339. And these two seem to rely on Manetho from the 2nd century BC. Briant tells us this is not credible. Artabanus was not from the Achaemenid royal line and cannot be considered an heir, nor did he lead an open revolt against the Achaemenids. His plotting was in secret and was brought to justice by Artaxerxes' discovery of it. A secret plotter does not claim regnal years or months. So Briant has to be correct. There was no 7-month rule of Artabanus recognized by the people. Furthermore, Africanus' king list is elsewhere unreliable. He assigns 42 years for Artaxerxes II rather than the correct 46, a most glaring error, and he puts the first year of Cyrus in 560-559, failing to count from Cyrus' accession in Babylon in 539. Eusebius' list also includes Artabanus, but he likewise errs with Artaxerxes II, 40 years, and Manetho is horribly inaccurate. From British Museum 32234 to AP number 6, that's Arabic papyri number 6, from Elephantine, that is August 465 to December 465, are only 5 months. Since there are not 7 months needed for Artabanus, the whole conjecture of Artabanus' 7 months rule must be dismissed. It could be that Artabanus' plot was turned into a 7-month reign in Egypt as a piece of political propaganda to justify Egypt's plans to revolt against Persia. That is, to embolden the rebels in Egypt. Egypt was supported by Greece during the revolt, and we may expect the Greek sources of the palace plot in Susa to be sympathetic to Artabanus' treason. All right, continuing the footnote. That Artaxerxes' first year began with Tishri 465 by Jewish reckoning is also confirmed by Aramaic papyri number 8. The only interpretation of AP 8 that requires no emendation is that November 460 BC was the 6th year of Artaxerxes by Jewish reckoning. Again, this suggests that year 1 begins with October 19, 465. Horn and Wood, who plead for the Tishri epoch to follow the Nisan epoch, say that the dates as given can be made to agree by no known means, so that a scribal error must be involved. Page 128. But then, let's see, I think I missed a pronoun here. But then, oh no, I didn't. Then confess on the next page. They confess on the next page. If the date line of the papyrus needed no emendation to achieve agreement with the astronomical facts, we should have proof that the Jews of Elephantine had failed to observe a second Adar in harmony with the Babylonian year. All right, end quote. Or, I may add, failing to follow it, as in Judea. It is reasonable that they should so miscalculate, because from 463 to 454, Egypt was revolting against the Persian Empire, and with quite a bit of success at first. The 7 months assigned to Artabanus by Africanus and Eusebius have the appearance of being engineered by the chronologers themselves to fill a hole in the chronology left by their assumption that Xerxes reigned only 20 years instead of 21, according to British Museum 32234. The difference between the quality of British Museum 32234 and Africanus or Eusebius is that British Museum 32234 is much closer to the events. In other words, it's contemporary evidence, rather than speculation centuries later. Okay, so that was a long footnote. 327. Okay, so we'll probably reread the sentence connected with the footnote. The Babylonian tablets know no successor except Artaxerxes I, and the Egyptian documents know only of Artaxerxes as succeeding Xerxes. British Museum 32234 is solid archaeological evidence that renders all attempts to date Artaxerxes' accession year after Tishri 465 BC unparsimonious. That is, it's not the simplest, the other theories are not the simplest explanation of the known facts. The usual Judean rule, then, is that up to Tishri 1 that year is Artaxerxes' accession year. We're speaking of 465, which is not counted and is rather assigned as the 21st year of Xerxes, even though the new king completed this year. Okay, next page. The accession method with the Tishri New Year translates 1C to 20C. Okay, so this is how it should be. Okay, actually this is the next chart here. All right, well, let's show you this here. All right, there's the chart there. It's kind of hard to show you the chart at the same time and read the text. So you might have to jump back a few seconds after I read the explanation of the chart. All right. Okay, the accession method with the Tishri New Year translates 1C to 20C. So the chart progresses from left to right here. Okay. So that's showing the proper translation of it. And the accession method with the Nisan New Year translates 1A to 20A. Okay, so that's telling you where the 20th year actually should go. It should correspond to 445 BC, not 444. Okay, therefore the assumption of the AD 34 advocates is incorrect. It is only proper for 20C to precede 20A by 6 months. This also means that 20C is in fact very close to the anniversary year of Artaxerxes I, and the 9th month of 20C precedes the first month of 20C, as in Nehemiah 1:1. Okay. It should be noted that Nehemiah omits Artaxerxes in Nehemiah 1:1 when he says the 20th year. This is because he knew quite well that the official 20th year of Artaxerxes began on Nisan 1, Nehemiah 2:1. Nehemiah 1:1 does not designate the official Persian 20th year, but rather a Judean translation of it, or possibly a date by anniversary years or Jubilee cycle. What needs to be noticed, however, is that the translation 20A to 20C keeps Nisan 1 invariant, but, and most importantly, 20A to 20B does not. It's what the AD 33 advocates want. It changes Nisan 1 by a year. If we look at the chart on, let's see, all right, I left out a page number. On page, okay, I guess the previous page, page 335. Okay, that was the last chart I showed you. Well, here it is again. Let's stop that camera wiggle. Okay. And some real good focus there. Okay. Find our place in the text here again. All right, I was reading here at the top of page 336. Doing it the wrong way. It changes Nisan 1 by a year. If we look at the chart again on previous page, it is clear that 464 BC begins the first year and 445 BC the 20th year. We are then bound to take Nehemiah 2:1 as the official Persian reckoning as the most parsimonious. Okay, so our camera cut off there after 30 minutes. So I'll have to backtrack a little bit here. I think the last thing I showed you was this chart. It probably cut off right after I showed it to you. See, we'll reread the end of page 335 here. It should be noticed that Nehemiah omits of Artaxerxes in Nehemiah 1:1 when he says the 20th year. This is because he knew quite well that the official 20th year of Artaxerxes began on Nisan 1, Nehemiah 2:1. Nehemiah 1:1 does not designate the official Persian 20th year, but rather a Judean translation of it, or possibly a date by anniversary years, or Jubilee cycle. What needs to be noticed, however, is that the translation 20a to 20c keeps Nisan 1 invariant, and most importantly, 20a to 20b does not. It changes Nisan 1 by a year. If we look at the chart again on the preceding page, it is clear that 464 BC begins the first year and 445 BC the 20th year. We are then bound to take Nehemiah 2:1 as the official Persian reckoning as the most parsimonious. The date of the wall building was thus 445 BC and not 444 BC. Nehemiah's method of dating satisfies both Persian and Judean reckoning of the Nisan date and also shows deference to the Persian dating as the official dating. Alright, figure 70, agreement of Nehemiah 1:1 with Nehemiah 2:1. Okay, so let's pop this chart up here. Here it is, right there. Okay. So you see in this chart the months of Kislev and Nisan, both falling in the 20th year, 20C. Okay, and you can see in the italics, I wrote this book long before I figured out that Nehemiah 2:1 was talking about the Jubilee cycle. So this note is added in on the chart, but 20C is in fact the 20th year of the Jubilee cycle, disguised to look like a foreign Tishri epoch. It's just after I realized that there are no Tishri to Nisan translations either way in the kings of Judah, the kings of Israel, or between Persian kings and the usages of the prophets. This is an unnecessary hypothesis. It's much more parsimonious and simple to use the epochs as each kingdom or people reckoned them and not to try to translate them. Okay. There is one more proof that Artaxerxes' 20th year in the Jewish reckoning would have been 446, 445, and not 445, 444. And this is from the legitimate reading of Daniel 9. So it counts as absolute biblical proof of which way things would be reckoned if we take the 20th year in Nehemiah 1:1 according to Jewish regnal counting. Here's the chart. Figure 71, Judean counting of the 20th year. Okay, so we see, this is in chart figure 71 here. This one down here. Okay. Alrighty. So we see the 69 sabbatical years in this chart. 69 sabbatical years in this chart, with the first one counting from 445 to 444. And the 69th straddling the year 32-33. And therefore we have to go with, you see the 20C and the 20B there, depending on which way you translate the 20th year here. Alrighty. The Tishri year 20C precedes the Nisan year 20A. Okay, I think I'm referring to the chart above. Yeah. In the previous figure, I have drawn in 2B in this figure also. Okay. We must decide between 20C and 20B for the 20th year of Artaxerxes by the Jewish Tishri epoch. In the top row, 1 represents the first sabbatical year. If 20C is correct, then Ezra's Torah reading is at the beginning of the sabbatical year. Okay, that would be what I've labeled TRC, Torah reading C. Okay, and likewise Nehemiah's usury and debt reforms. If 20B were correct, then the Torah reading and debt release would come at the end. TRB, Torah reading B. But Deuteronomy 31:10, I think we discussed this in the last video, teaches that the Torah should be read at the edge of 7 years in the set time of the year of release in the Feast of Booths. Eben Ezra proved from Jeremiah 34:14 that the words at the edge of mean the leading edge of the 7th year. Okay. For a servant is only to serve 6 years. Likewise, no one is to be indebted in the 7th year, but only for 6 years. We must therefore rule 20B out as the parsimonious explanation. The 69 sabbatical years are the sum of the 7 sevens and 62 sevens of Daniel 9. Furthermore, there is no chance of shifting the sabbatical years to the right even 1 year. The prophecy says after the 62 sevens that Messiah would be cut off. Shifting 1 year to the right would place the 69th year over Nisan AD 34. Then the crucifixion would not be after the 69th year. The crucifixion likewise cannot be bumped over to AD 35 or 36, as the first would place the crucifixion on Tuesday and the latter on Sabbath. That's why those years are not considered. So we see that the sabbatical year cannot be moved. This shows that the correct translation of the Babylonian Nisan epoch for the 20th year to the Tishri epoch for the 20th year is 20C. It also shows that the 7th year of Artaxerxes I was 459, 458. Okay, and this is going to kind of introduce subsequent sections here. See how long it's going to take to get through this section here. Oh, several pages. It's going to take up quite a bit of time here. All right. So, let's see here. We saw that chart, and we read that. Okay, so we see the sabbatical year cannot be moved. This shows that the correct translation of the Babylonian Nisan epoch for the 20th year to the Tishri epoch for the 20th year is 20C. It also shows that the 7th year of Artaxerxes was 459 to 458. Okay, so I'll show you how to calculate the 7th year of Artaxerxes. That would be where my thumb is here. Right there, counting out the first 7 years. And you can see that the 7th year is 459, 458. Okay. Xerxes murdered in the summer of 465. Okay. This last diagram shows why the Seventh-day Adventist eschatology beginning in 457 BC is invalid. It is apparent that the Nisan must be in 458 if Ezra is taken to come before Nehemiah. Okay, I will show later that Ezra came in 398 BC, as after Nehemiah. There is one final proof that Nehemiah did not build the walls in 444 BC. Nehemiah 6:15 tells us that the wall was finished in 52 days. on the 25th of the month of Elul. Please note that the 25th of Elul was on the second day of the week. This makes the beginning day of the 52 days of 3, August 1, which was a Sabbath. So if we look at the finishing date here, get this up here really quick. Now you look at that arrow. Okay, it points to the 25th of Elul, 444 BC. And then that would be September 21st in the Julian calendar, which is on the next chart. All right. The arrow points to the Julian equivalent. Okay, here is the previous month and its Julian equivalent, the month of Av. Okay, and the arrow again there is pointing to the 3rd of Av, which is a Sabbath. Okay, and that would be August 1st. So here is, let's see, the next chart. Right there. Okay, and that's pointing to August 1st, which is the Sabbath. Okay, so this is what you end up with if you count back 52 days and you try to determine the starting date for the building project. Okay, so note that Av 3, August 1, is the 129th day of the year. So if you look at the charts again, you'll see that the day number of the year is numbered there, and that Elul 25, September 1, is the 180th day of the year. The formula of inclusive counting is to subtract and add 1. Thus, 180 minus 129 plus 1 is 52. AD 33 advocates should be made aware of the fact that their theory requires the famed wall builder and Sabbath reformer to start his project on the Sabbath. The second point of calculation AD 33 advocates introduce is the 360-day year. We better zoom back out here. Is the 360-day year. Okay, our presumed 360-day year. They first reduced the actual 365 and 1/4 day length to 360 days, claiming that they must do so because a, quote, prophetic year is 360 days. This is supposed to be justified because the year during Noah's flood is assumed to be 360 days. Footnote 329. For a demonstration that the supposed 360-day year does not explain the Genesis data any better than the current year and month length, see Appendix 3, Noah's Flood Year, page 459. The mean tropical year is 365.2421 ... days. The mean synodic lunation is 29.53 ... days. Thus, on average, any period contains an equal number of 29 and 30-day months. On average. Okay. All right. I guess I'm going to pause this and splice it together. Okay, we're going to pick up where we left off here again after I get a little water. Okay. Oh, we were talking about the change of year length here. The second point of calculation AD 33 advocates introduce is the 360-day year. They first reduced the actual 365 and a quarter day year length to 360 days, claiming that they must do so because a prophetic year is 360 days. This is supposed to be justified because the year during Noah's flood is assumed to be 360 days. And we read the footnote already. Clearly, the year was not 360 days in the period between Nehemiah and Messiah. Further, they argue that the book of Revelation employs a 360-day year by assuming that 42 months equals 1260 days, and then divide this to find 1 month equal to 30 days, and then multiply by 12 to arrive at 360. However, Revelation nowhere equates 42 months and 1260 days. 42 months on the scriptural calendar is 29.5 times 42, which is equal to 1239 days, give or take a day. So the period of anti-Messiah's rule is shorter than the period of time Israel is protected. Nowhere is the exact equation of the time periods stated. This becomes important in eschatology too. So eventually I'm going to delve into some of that forbidden topic that we're not supposed to use Daniel for, which is eschatology. Nevertheless, and actually we're doing that right now because we're applying it to the eschatology of Yeshua's comings. First coming and second coming. Nevertheless, advocates of AD 33 must use a 360-day year because it is the only way their calculation even comes close. Okay, this 360-day year also neglects the sabbatical years upon which Daniel 9 is based. Okay, so in other words, the sabbatical year system has now been swapped out for something that's different than the sabbatical year system. So you could say, this is an aside comment, much like the Sabbath day has been, just much like Sunday has been substituted for the Sabbath day. All right, so it's the same sort of thing. Okay, so Daniel 9:2, if you would look that up, leads us back to 2 Chronicles 36:21, and this in turn leads us back to Leviticus 26:34-35 and 43. So you've got to maintain an actual sabbatical year connection here. Further, the Almighty told Israel that he would punish them 7 times. Leviticus 26:18, 26:21, 26:24, 26:28, which matches the broken sabbatical years with Daniel 9:24, 70 sevens, and Ezekiel 4:5-6, which mention 420 years, that is the 390 plus 40, that contain the actual 70 sabbatical years that Israel broke. Note 330. My other book shows that the Jubilee years must be counted also to get a total of 70 broken land Sabbaths in 420 years. Okay. The rest of the land. Okay, neglecting all of this, AD 33 advocates add up the 7 sevens and 62 sevens. 7 plus 62 equals 69, which we do the same thing, so that's not actually the error part. And then treating them as 69 7-year periods, where each year is 360 days, they multiply 69 times 360 times 7, which equals 173,880 days. We see then that the subtotal for a 7-year period is 2,520 days. This is shorter than any proper 7-year sabbatical period. Taken 69 times, the total days are 173,880. This is supposed to be the number of days from some point in Nisan 444 BC to some point ending just before Nisan 14 in AD 33. Okay. All right, Cameron's going good. Good. All right. According to Parker and Duberstein, Nisan 1 444 BC was April 3rd, Julian. Alright, so that's page 32, Artaxerxes I, Babylonian chronology. So I showed you the chart on that at least twice. Okay. Also, we saw on page 242, the Friday date for AD 33 is April 3. What then is the total number of days from one date to the other? First, the spring equinox was 326, 444 BC, March 26, 444 BC, Julian, 8 hours and 39 minutes. As the Persians never placed the first month before this equinox, the first month was placed after it on April 3, 444 BC, just as Parker and Duberstein state. Further, this date is Aviv 1 for the biblical calendar as well. For as we have seen, the 15th of Nisan may not fall before the Tekufa, spring equinox date, which it would if a date based on the month before the new moon of April 3, 444 BC were used. Adar in this year would begin on March 4, 444 BC. And the 15th of Adar would be March 18, 444 BC, which was before the above mentioned spring equinox on March 26, 444 BC. So this year, by both the scriptural method and the Babylonian method, Nisan 1 fell on April 3, 444 BC. So there is no possibility that Nisan may precede the date of April 3, 444 BC. Furthermore, the only Friday date in AD 33 is April 3. So there is no chance of changing this date to a later one. Now back to our question, how many days are there from one day to the other? The Julian day number for April 2, 444 BC, when the new moon was first seen, was 1,559,344. The Julian day number for AD 33, April 3, is 1,733,190. Okay, plus 14, so get this the 14th day of the month, is 1,733,204. To find the inclusive difference, subtract and add 1. 1,733,204 minus 1,559,344 plus 1 equals 173,861. We see that the number of days is 19 days less than the required number, 173,880. Okay, so 173,880 minus 173,861 equals 19. So those are the calculations. But the prophecy, next paragraph, says that Messiah would be cut off after the time period. This time period is 19 days short of the proposed 173,880 days. What did AD 33 advocates do about this? Since they cannot move the Friday date, April 3, forward, they moved the date for Nisan 1 backward 1 month in 444 BC. This month was really Adar in the Babylonian, Persian, and scriptural calendars, but they falsely called it Nisan. The AD 33 advocates never tell you about this flaw in their system, but it is an absolutely fatal flaw, for it sets a Passover date before the spring equinox in 444 BC, and flatly contradicts the scripture that says it must be kept from days to days. Okay. Note 333. This is the technical phrase for the period between Tekufo equinoxes, as explained earlier in this book. It is quite clear from the study of chronological systems and pseudo-chronological systems that if you break enough facts and sweep them out of sight, that one can make it appear that two events are synchronized with the stated time that transpired between them. But once those facts are brought back and fairly and honestly faced, it becomes evidence that such systems are ad hoc speculations that disagree with reality. The AD 33 date simply does not hold up to the evidence, having to place the 20th year of Artaxerxes in 444 BC instead of 445 BC, where archaeology and history place it, is a fatal error. The Daniel 9 calculation of AD 33 advocates is imperfect, and a near miss is as good as a mile, since biblical prophecy does not deal with near misses, but exact predictions. The 360-day year, in any case, is not according to Scripture in Genesis 1:14, which appoints the sun as a sign for days and years. Daniel 9 is a sign prophecy, since it involves years, and so it is the sign of Jonah, and so is the sign of Jonah, since it involves days. If we define a year or a day without regard to the movements of the sun to indicate the start and end of years, then we are not using the scriptural sign, but a sign of our own human invention. The use of the 360-day year in this case is also fatally flawed, as it is the ignoring of sabbatical years, 3 days and 3 nights, and finally the plain statement in the resurrection passages that Yeshua rose on the first of the Sabbath after Passover. Okay, folks, that's the end of this section, and a little preview of the next section that we're going to do. The title of the section is called The Failure of AD 31 and Daniel 9. I'll show you the title of it right here. There we go. The Failure of AD 31 and Daniel 9. Okay, so this last section we just discussed, this is the standard evangelical Calvary Chapel dispensationalist viewpoint on the matter. And the next section, of course, is going to deal with the Seventh-day Adventist viewpoint on the matter. And we will show how that also likewise fails. All right, thank you for listening. That's it.